I,
But who's going to manage the screen if you're not going to be there?
you guys, I'll explain. I'll explain. Going live right now. All right, good morning, everybody. It's September 1st, and today we're going to mix it up a little bit. Dad, you can read out of any book you've got. All you need to do is read the special theme, number 3, what is the world? And then lesson 244, I am in danger nowhere in the world. And that lesson starts out with a prayer and finishes up on a high note, and then you can hand it off to Tom. And as long as we're reading the lessons, it really doesn't matter to me what book we read it out of. So I'm going to put it on the team view this morning, which is a little bit different than normal. Usually I follow the lesson with the reading, but I can't do that while I'm driving. So we'll just wing it, and it'll be great. And
Okay,
everybody will get exactly what they need, whatever that happens to be. I don't know. God will be in charge.
so we're going to wing and a prayer, right?
Yes, maybe even 2 prayers.
Okay,
And we're off. This is it. We're
okay,
here. Would you like to start?
yes.
Thanks, Dad.
We're going to start with the theme for these 10 lessons, which is what is the world? The world is false perception. It is born of error, and it has not left its source. It will remain no longer than the thought that gave it birth is cherished. When the thought of separation has been changed to one of true forgiveness, will the world be seen in quite another light, and one that leads to truth, where all the world must disappear and all its errors vanish. Now its source has gone, and its effects are gone as well. The world was made as an attack on God. It symbolizes fear. And what is fear except love's absence? Thus, the world was meant to be a place where God could enter not, and where his Son could be apart from him. Here was perception born, for knowledge could not cause such insane thoughts. Knowing could not cause such insane thoughts. But eyes deceive and ears hear falsely. Now mistakes become quite possible, for certainty has gone. The mechanisms of illusion have been born instead, and now they go to find what has been given them to seek. Their aim is to fulfill the purpose which the world was made to witness and make real. They see in its illusions but a solid base where truth exists, upheld apart from lies. Yet everything which they report is but illusion, which is kept apart from truth. A sight was made to lead away from truth. It can be redirected. Sounds become the call of God, and all perception can be given a new purpose by the one whom God appointed Savior to the world. Follow his light and see the world as he beholds it. Hear his voice alone in all that speaks to you, and let him give you peace and certainty, which you have thrown away, but heaven has preserved for you in him. Let us not rest content until the world has joined our changed perception, Let us not be satisfied until forgiveness has been made complete, and let us not attempt to change our function. We must save the world one at a time. For we who made it must behold it through the eyes of Christ, that what was made to die can be restored to everlasting life. Mornings. Morning, Bob. Okay, now we go to lesson 244. I am in danger nowhere in the world. Your son, this is the prayer, your son is safe wherever he may be. That's all of us. Your son is safe wherever he may be, for you are there with him. He need but call upon your name, and he will recollect his safety and your love, for they are one. How can he fear or doubt or fail to know? He cannot suffer, be endangered, or experience unhappiness when he belongs to you, beloved and loving, in the safety of your fatherly embrace. And there we are in truth. No storms can come into the hallowed haven of our home. In God we are secure. For what can come to threaten God himself or make afraid that will forever be a part of him? So I think in this last prayer, um, clearly you can see the advantages of using Tom's books and his version, in that the pronouns are interchanged with the actual antecedents of the pronouns. In other words, the nouns that it refers to. It's a little bit easier to understand and follow. But that is the lesson for today. And Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you for your exercise.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Uh, Today, I'd like to maybe be more of a discussion. Lesson 244 says, I am in danger nowhere in the world. And basically, this lesson is saying that you're not in danger any place in the world. And I think for most people, or it's not really, if we look at our fears that most people suffer from, the number one fear in this state that we're currently in, this world of perception, is the fear of death. And the fear of death, obviously, is the idea that there's some danger out there and that I will cease to exist when I lose the game token we call the body. So I think that being the number one fear, we have to be aware of that. And uh, I'd say that in this case, it's important for us to be able to deal with that fear, because as long as you obviously perceive yourself to be the body and the body you, you will be trapped in a world of fear in which you're always concerned that you need to protect that game token. And so uh, the question really is there any evidence out there that would support the idea that you're not the body? Because in our secular society today, one of the big things, and it's always been a question for humanity to ponder, is whether or not there is some type of life after the death of the physical body. There's been a lot of time spent on that aspect and trying to discover or uncover whether or not when the body ceases, if you cease. Now, we've had some experiences or some meditations or revelations that would perhaps give us the idea that we are not the body, and therefore the idea of the leaving our awareness or consciousness, leaving the physical realm, does not perhaps cause our existence to cease. That's something that is perhaps done on a personal level. So what I'd like to do is to kind of throw it open to this idea. Does people have any experiences that would indicate that they are the body, and that they are not the body, that there's something that still continues to exist? And in my book, Seminar Formula for Fearless Awakening, we talk about this fear of death, and that there's a number of things that would maybe provide some evidence that you still exist with or without a body. I defined birth as the idea of you as consciousness, which is awareness or an energy field that uh, is able to focus its attention any place that it wishes to place it. That you as consciousness is energy, and that birth, correctly defined, is your consciousness coming into a game token, we call it the physical body, for the first time in regards to that body. And death is your physical consciousness leaving that body. So just how we define it is important, because if your consciousness, if you define yourself as consciousness, you still exist. So physicists tell us that there is a basic law in the universe, which is the conservation of energy, and that energy doesn't cease to exist, it just changes forms and transforms. So from a physicist standpoint, you being energy will always exist in some form or another. But we're going to ask the question, is there some other evidence that would support this idea that you're consciousness? And whenever we look at that, uh, we probably need to look at some experiences that people have had in regards to death. And those would probably be the near-death experience, the idea now that we have this notion of reincarnation, that we have maybe been here before, or that there's evidence that people seem to recall or remember some things that they shouldn't be aware of based on their only one-time existence in this lifetime. They seem to be aware of past events that have occurred. And then the last one is probably now psychologists having the ability to uh, take people back to actually experiences that are what they term life between life, LBL experiences, where they can regress people to the state of awareness before they had a body, or in between those events of the body. So, and ending fear and more in depth in uncovering your default belief class goes into great depth into this idea, especially the uncovering default belief class. But this whole notion of having experiences that would tell us that there is some existence beyond the body is something that we may not have personal experiences, therefore we need to piggyback off of other people's experiences to help us increase the believability that we still exist. Because if you realize that you are not the body, this idea of the fear of death, or as this lesson puts it, I am in danger nowhere in this world, that's because it's predicated on the idea that you, as individuated consciousness, still exists, and that you, as individuated consciousness, with or without a body, will always be, and that your spirit, not the game token we call the body, is invulnerable, and that nothing in this world can harm that essence. And although we can do a meditation or whatever and experience maybe being something other than the body, that's a personal experience that really doesn't give us any evidence or proof. So I'd like to ask, and I know that in the past we've had people that have had near-death experiences, and the near-death experience is something, maybe I can just read out of Indy here. The near-death experience is something that has been intensively documented and studied by the medical community. And it's important to realize that in many of these NDE, which stands for near-death experience cases, the person has been declared clinically dead. So brain activity has actually ceased. And these are not simple cases in which patients were in a comatose state and then regain consciousness. So the first thing that we want to realize is that in these cases of near-death experiences, many of them, the people have not been just in a state of a coma. They've actually been clinically dead. Brain wave activity has ceased. They've been perhaps kept alive by some machine, but for all practical purposes, the person, according to science, would say that they've reached the point of no return. And thus, on these cases, they can't be dismissed as some temporary delusional state. So, what do these case studies indicate? It says that people that have had these experiences, these NDEs, share a common story. They all describe the NDE as a rewarding, loving, and peaceful experience. It's a feeling of unconditional love and total acceptance. They often talk about going into the light, and they all indicate that this is an experience was not frightening or judgmental in any way. What is interesting regarding NDEs is that the near-death experiences are not limited to certain types or groups of individuals. NDEs is found throughout all classes of humanity. NDE occurs regardless of your religious affiliation. Even atheists and agnostics have had that same NDE experience. Your nationality and societal norms play no part in the NDE. Both saints and criminals report the same experience. This NDE seems to change the person's viewpoint. The near-death experience leaves the participant with an expanded vision of life. They now talk about having the big picture and how they realize that life should not be taken too seriously. They know that they are not a body, but instead a spiritual essence, and thus no longer fear death. They claim that God is only love and that we should enjoy the ride. It is the near-death experience that is perhaps the most striking evidence that hell does not appear to be waiting on the other side. And this near-death experience is the closest thing that we have to death. Now, in regards to this, I would say that if these people who have returned from the dead say that there is nothing to fear, I would suggest that their stories cannot be ignored. Unless this is some elaborate hoax by someone whose goal is to purposely deceive us, God cannot be something we need to fear in this lifetime. Those who have been blessed with the NDE, these near-death experiences, describe the other side as a totally supportive and loving place. The NDE experience would support the belief that most would call is only love. So this NDE is something that we can look at, and in this world of perception now, ending fear, the 7-hour formula, takes a little different approach to the subject of ending fear because it doesn't rest on revelation or spirituality. It actually turns to science and looks at science and says, is there some science? Is there some physical evidence that supports these ideas that with or without a body, you still exist? And the NDE is that example. I personally haven't least been blessed with the awareness of an NDE. So I can't speak of that personally. But I know that other people in this class have had those experiences. And I would say that that's something that they have, perhaps they might want to share, because through other people's experiences, that can help us build some evidence that I am endangered nowhere in this world, that I am not the body, that I still exist. There's a lot of psychological research also that is supportive of the idea of reincarnation. We've probably all heard of cases of past life regression that have been induced under hypnosis. Many of these cases have been documented and checked for historical accuracy. Research has concluded that these patients possess awareness of past facts and events that they should not have been privy to based on their current life. These case studies would also support the notion of a spiritual connectivity to the past that extends beyond this lifetime. Again, in this case, I've never been placed under past life regression, but I do have remembrances of past lives. I do remember, and I have personal experience of remembering the last time I lived on. I lived on.